They want to introduce a patriotic curriculum. Let's see what that says, right? What does it say? Any teaching about a period or example of British or European imperialism or slavery must be paired with the teaching of a non-European occurrence of the same to ensure balance.
So he's a comedian. He then goes on to joke about comparing, if Hitler's a baddie, but what about Genghis Khan, right? As if we're just going to sort of compare all the bad things and make them less bad in that comparison. Really, the point of this reform policy, and I'm not saying this is a good policy or not, I'm just saying let's understand where it's coming from. It's coming from the fact that it's increasingly done in academic circles and in what you could call kind of a postmodern worldview to look down on British history and criticize some things. Now, we should be open to criticism, right? What we might not want to do is to compare then with now, right? And sort of litigate the past based upon current standards that weren't the standards of the world at the time. And what we also might not want to do is going to divorce something from its historical context and compare it to nations, right? So if the Brits were doing something, I think it's also okay to say, well, let's have a look and see what the Europeans were doing. Not to make it less worse, not to absolve ourselves of responsibility, not to whitewash the past, but to put it in real context. Lots of people, for instance, when it comes to slavery, grow up with this idea that the British Empire invented slavery without really understanding that most every society in history had some form of slavery. It certainly wasn't invented by the Brits, and then maybe missing the point, which is what some people on the right get upset by, that the British Empire actually put a lot of effort, blood, treasure, etc. into ending British slavery, which made it less competitive economically, and at times made it unpopular with nations that still wanted to engage in the slave trade. Now, none of this is to diminish that slavery is a bad thing, and we've done well to come to a moral consensus about that, and we've still got lots of work to do because the number of slaves, depending on if you use the definition of modern slavery, is actually going up in the world in numbers, not proportion. So we've still got plenty of work to do with this, but you can understand that you lose the argument a bit with people on the right if you're not willing to say, yeah, we did some bad things, but also some other people did, and perhaps the bad things we did, we also tried to put right. That's giving it more of a full context. And I think the postmodern worldview tends to only look at the power relations and say everything about this is bad, everything about colonialism was always bad, and we need to feel guilty for it. I think you can take that perspective, but if you balance it by saying, hey, actually, there were some other things that happened in the world, and at the time, this was kind of where the consciousness was, even if that consciousness by today's standards is abhorrent. Let's say that, but let's use that comparison with today and say that's what we're doing, rather than litigating the past based upon a set of assumptions and sort of cultural and moral values that weren't so prevalent at the time. Anyway, what do you think?